Every era has its icons. Cristiano Ronaldo, relentless, unstoppable, trailed by flashing cameras and the roar of stadiums. Lionel Messi, football's golden child, his brilliance broadcast to every corner of the world. But what about the ones who never asked for any of it? The men who built legacies in silence and suffered alone. Andrés Iniesta never roared, he whispered. On football's grandest stages, he painted masterpieces with his feet and walked away before anyone could applaud. His brilliance wasn't measured in goals or headlines, but in the unseen, in the subtle touch that opened impossible spaces, in the path no one else could see. While others chased records, Iniesta created memories. Think back to the 2009 Champions League final, Barcelona against Manchester United, a match dominated by giants, and yet, in the quiet corners of the pitch, it was Iniesta pulling the strings, dismantling a defense without ever breaking a sweat. No tricks, no theatrics, just perfect timing and a mind 3 moves ahead of the game. But don't confuse his silence for peace. Behind the elegance, behind the poetry, was a man quietly falling apart. At the peak of his success, Andrés Iniesta was drowning in a darkness no trophy could lift. Depression, anxiety, invisible battles fought in cold hotel rooms and silent locker rooms, while the world cheered his name, blind to the storm inside. He stood on football's highest mountains, Champions League nights, World Cup finals. He played the perfect symphony, but felt none of the joy. And when it was all over, there was no grand farewell, no final explosion of lights and glory, just a quiet walk across a pitch he had called home for 2 decades, his tears hidden by the rain. This isn't just the story of a footballer, it's the story of a man who searched for peace in a world that refused to give him any. This is the story of Andrés Iniesta, the loneliest legend. Before the lights, before the glory, there was only Fuentealbilla, a village so small even the winds seemed to forget it. A place where futures were written in the dirt, not in the stars. And in that forgotten corner of Spain, a pale, silent boy with oversized boots and even bigger dreams began writing a story no one could see coming. He wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the strongest, but give him a ball and the world around him faded away. While other children charged headfirst at the game, Andrés Iniesta stood still, his eyes scanning the chaos, waiting, calculating, and when his moment came, he didn't just play the ball, he made it sing. At just 12 years old, his talent had outgrown the dusty streets. Barcelona came calling, and his parents, humble, hard-working people, did the hardest thing a parent could do. They placed every hope they had on a frightened child's shoulders. He boarded a bus to La Masia, alone, crying, his small frame pressed against the window, as the only life he'd ever known disappeared into the distance. La Masia wasn't a dream back then, not for Andrés. It was a prison of cold nights under unfamiliar ceilings, silent tears soaked into his pillow. Surrounded by strangers, far from home, he wasn't chasing glory, he was just trying to survive. But even in those darkest moments, when homesickness threatened to swallow him whole, he found his sanctuary. The ball, on the pitch, the sadness melted away. His feet spoke words his mouth never could. Every delicate touch, every impossible pass was a silent message to the world, I'm still here. His coaches saw something rare. Iniesta didn't dominate the game through power, he mastered it through invisibility. He'd glide between defenders before they even knew he was there. His control was perfect, his passes impossibly precise, and though he barely spoke a word, his football spoke volumes. While others grew loud and confident, Iniesta unfolded quietly. His brilliance didn't explode, it blossomed. His passes weren't just accurate, they were poetry in motion. His movement wasn't just graceful, it was art. He wasn't there to dominate, he was there to create beauty. And little by little, the boy from nowhere began to change football forever. By 2009, Andrés Iniesta had everything. Champions League glory, La Liga dominance. He wasn't just part of the greatest midfield in football, he was its silent architect. Xavi controlled the rhythm, Messi delivered the magic, but it was Iniesta who unlocked the impossible, who saw spaces where none existed. That season, his technical brilliance reached impossible heights. He played passes so delicate they seemed to roll on silk. His dribbles were silent escapes. He would glide through a wall of defenders, leaving them chasing shadows. In the semi-final against Chelsea, with seconds left on the clock, the ball found its way to Iniesta at the edge of the box. One moment, one swing of his boot, and in that instant, he didn't just send Barcelona to the final, he broke hearts across London and made history with a single perfect strike. But even in that moment of triumph, the darkness was already there. That summer, tragedy struck. Dani Jarque, Iniesta's close friend and captain of Espanyol, died suddenly. A heart attack, just 26 years old. One moment they were sharing jokes over text, the next, silence forever. Something inside Andrés shattered. His body began to ache without reason. Sleep became a distant memory. Surrounded by glory, his mind felt nothing but emptiness. While a world saw a flawless footballer, Iniesta was quietly drowning. And yet, on the pitch, he was perfect. Every pass found its mark, every touch was weightless. His control was absolute. Even in his darkest hours, Iniesta performed with the grace of a man untouched by pain. But it was all a mask. Behind closed doors, the battles raged on, alone, unseen, and nearly unbearable. He didn't ask for sympathy. He didn't cry out for help. He sought therapy. He endured, quietly. And when the 2010 World Cup arrived, Andrés Iniesta didn't walk onto that field chasing immortality. He stepped onto it, desperately hoping to feel something again. In Spain's greatest moment, his thoughts were not with himself. They were with the friend he lost. And even as a nation celebrated immortality, Andrés Iniesta stood there, quietly honoring the one man who wasn't there to see it. For most legends, the farewell is a grand performance, one final roar from the crowd, one last heroic display under football's brightest lights. But Andrés Iniesta, his ending, it came as quietly as his career had unfolded, without fanfare, without spectacle, almost unnoticed. By 2018, his body had nothing left to give. The years had taken their toll on his legs, on his lungs, and on his heart. Yet, even in those final days, his touch remained silk, his vision was untouched by time. In his last appearances, the magic was still there, the perfectly weighted pass splitting defenses, the gentle feint that sent younger, faster players stumbling in the wrong direction. And then, it was time. No final Champions League glory, no dramatic final showdown in El Clasico, just one last quiet night at Camp Nou. A game played not for records, but for goodbyes. The crowd stood. They sang his name as the sun set on an era. But even as their voices rose into the fading light, Iniesta felt the finality of it all. This wasn't the ending he imagined. There were no fireworks, no final defiant moment, just the long, lonely walk back into the tunnel. His legacy, like his career, slipping quietly into the background. Long after the cameras stopped rolling, he stayed, sitting cross-legged at the center of the pitch, alone, no speeches, no dramatic gestures, just a silent goodbye to the only place that had ever made him feel truly alive. The field wasn't just grass and lines, it was his sanctuary, his closest friend, the one place he was never invisible. And when he stood for the final time, there were no tears for the cameras, no carefully prepared farewell, just a soft glance back at the empty stadium, and then silence. He left the greatest stage of his life exactly as he had lived it, humbly, gracefully, and utterly alone. While others wrote their final chapters beneath football's brightest lights, Andrés Iniesta chose something different. No final European tour, no lucrative coaching ambitions, no farewell tour to relive past glories. He simply disappeared. Japan, Vissel Kobe, a club far from the headlines, far from the madness. But for Iniesta, it wasn't exile, it was escape, a chance to breathe again, a place where the roar of expectation fell silent, and the only sound left was the gentle rhythm of a football at his feet. For the first time in decades, he found joy in the smallest moments. quiet mornings spent walking unfamiliar streets without being recognized, afternoons filled with light training sessions, the burden of perfection finally lifted from his shoulders, evenings at home with his family, where his children knew him not as a football legend, but simply as their father. And isn't that all he ever really wanted? And when he stepped onto the pitch in Japan, there was no pressure to dominate, no demand for impossible brilliance. He played for the love of the game, for the pure childlike joy that had started it all on the dusty streets of Fuentealbilla. In those final years, far from Europe's stadiums, Iniesta became something greater than a footballer. He became free. The genius who'd given everything to the world finally played for himself. No applause needed, no validation required. And maybe that's why his story feels different, because it wasn't written for the world to celebrate. It was written in silent moments, in small victories no one else saw, in the quiet courage it takes to walk away from everything you've ever known and say, "I've done enough." He was never the loudest, never the most celebrated, but when the lights dimmed and the voices faded, Andrés Iniesta left behind something far greater than glory. He left behind peace. And maybe, just maybe, that is the greatest victory of all.